Learning outcomes. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the virus, learn how to detect virus, identify about worms, how to avoid virus and worms. Introduction. A computer virus is a program made to damage or cause destruction to a computer. It extends by email attachments, transferable devices, websites having malevolent scripts and file downloads. A computer virus attaches itself with the host files and activates whenever one opens the infected files. The virus can duplicate itself and infect other files on the computer, causing more harm.
Different types of computer virus on the basis of action. Macroviruses. In computing terminology, a macrovirus is a virus that is written in a macro language. That is to say, a programming language which is embedded inside a software application, example, word processors and spreadsheet applications. Since some applications, notably but not exclusively Microsoft Office, allow macro programs to be embedded in documents such that the macros are run automatically when the document is opened. This provides a distinct mechanism by which malicious computer instructions can spread. This is one reason it can be dangerous to open unexpected attachments in emails. Many modern antivirus programs detect macroviruses as well as other types. These viruses infect the files formed using several applications or programs that include macros like doc, pps, xls, and mdb. They involuntarily infect the archive with macros and also templates and documents that are enclosed in the file. They hide in files shared from emails and networks. A well-known example of a macrovirus is the Melissa virus from 1999. Anyone who opened a document with the virus in Microsoft Office would catch the virus. The virus would then send itself by email to the first 50 people in the person's address book. This made the virus replicate at a fast rate since a macrovirus depends on the application rather than the operating system. It can infect a computer running any operating system to which the targeted application has been ported. In particular, since Microsoft Word is available on Macintosh computers, Word macroviruses can attack these as well as Windows platforms. Macroviruses include Relax, Barblas, Melissa.a, 097M/Y2K. Memory resident viruses. They generally attach themselves within the computer memory. They become active when the OS runs and end up infecting other open files. They conceal in RAM. Resident viruses overwrite, interrupt handling code or other functions, and when the operating system attempts to access the target file or disk sector, the virus code intercepts the request and redirects the control flow to the replication module, infecting the target. Memory resident viruses include CMJ, Mave, Randex, Merclunky. Overwrite viruses. Overwriting viruses are the simplest forms of infection. These kinds of viruses erase any information in a file they infect, making them partially or entirely useless if they are infected. Once in the computer, they substitute each of the file content, but the file size doesn't change. When the substituted file is executed, the virus can try to replicate again. Because overwriting viruses delete the original file either in whole or in part, it is not possible to disinfect them. They must be restored from a backup instead. While overwriting viruses of this type were mostly restricted to the MS-DOS era, we do see malware nowadays that replaces system files and may include some of the original file's functionality but also runs undesirable processes. Override viruses include TRJ reboot, Way, Trivial 88D, direct action viruses. A direct action virus is a virus that attacks or starts to work immediately. This can include non-violent and less often violent activities which target persons, groups, or property deemed offensive to the direct action participants. These viruses mostly duplicate or take actions once they are executed. When a certain condition is met, the virus will act by infecting the files in the directory or the folder specified in the autoexec.bat. The viruses are usually seen in the hard disk's root index, but they keep on changing location. For example, Vienna virus, directory virus. It is also recognized as cluster virus or file system virus. They infect the computer's directory by altering the pathway signifying file position. They are generally to be found in the disk but have an effect on the entire directory. For example, dir2 virus, web scripting virus. The major web pages consist of some intricate codes in order to generate an interactive and attention grabbing content. Such a set of laws is regularly demoralized to cause certain objectionable actions. They typically invent from the infected web pages or browsers. For example, JS Fortnite, a virus that spreads via malicious emails. Multipartite virus. These kind of viruses can spread in various ways. Their method varies according to their OS installed and existence of certain files. They tend to hide in the computer's memory but do not infect the hard disk. Multipartite viruses tend to work fast, and some of the infections are subtle and are unnoticed. The following symptoms may indicate an infection from a multipartite virus. Drive controllers will no longer be present in Device Manager. Constant notification about virtual memory being low. Screen content will appear as if it is melting. Applications and file sizes continually change. Hard drive reformats itself. Word processing document extension modified from DOC to DOT. Program may or may not execute and will experience much longer loading times. Some other types of viruses. Trojan horse, a program formed to distribute a malicious program that may then cause damage to your computer. A Trojan horse is delivered by somebody or hidden inside another program that may seem undamaging. Trojans are generally spread by some form of social engineering, for example, where a user is duped into executing an email attachment disguised to be unsuspicious. Example, a routine form to be filled in, or by drive-by download. Although their payload can be anything, many modern forms act as a backdoor, contacting a controller which can then have unauthorized access to the affected computer. While Trojans and backdoors are not easily detectable by themselves, computers may appear to run slower due to heavy processor or network usage. Unlike computer viruses and worms, Trojans generally do not attempt to inject themselves into other files or otherwise propagate themselves. Spyware, a program made to supervise your proceedings on a computer. A general type of spyware is a keylogger program. This program can trace every keystroke and mouse click you have done. Spyware can be delivered via a Trojan horse program. Some spyware is not meant to be malicious, such as tracking cookies. A tracking cookie tracks your internet usage and sends the information back to its source. Adware. Adware is a form of malware one word pop ups. Adware is formed to pop up advertisements. Adware can be very annoying. When the term is used in this way, the severity of its implication varies. While some sources rate adware only as an irritant, others classify it as an online threat or even rate it as seriously as computer viruses and trojans. The precise definition of the term in this context also varies. adware that observes the computer user's activities without their consent and reports it to the software's author is called spyware. Worms. A nasty little program can cause less speed in a network. A worm will duplicate itself and multiply from computer to computer. Worms are commonly spread through email attachments. Worms almost always cause at least some harm to the network, even if only by consuming bandwidth, whereas viruses always corrupt or modify files on a targeted computer. Boot sector virus. Not so usual any longer, but they were spiteful little programs that got encumbered into your master boot record. Most frequently multiply by floppy disks, these viruses could then commence themselves ahead of your operating system even loaded. Today, most BIOS avert code from being written to the boot sector. Time bomb. A virus made to perform at a later date or upon an action done. These programs lay inactive until an incident occurs. Browser hijacker. A browser hijacker, sometimes called hijackware, is a type of malware program that alters your computer's browser settings so that you are redirected to websites that you had no intention of visiting. Most browser hijackers alter default home pages and search pages to those of their customers who pay for that service because of the traffic it generates. More virulent versions often add bookmarks for pornographic websites to the user's own bookmark collection, generate pornographic pop up adware and spyware. A browser hijacker may be installed as part of freeware installation. In this case, the browser hijacker is probably mentioned in the user agreement, although obviously not identified as a browser hijacker. File infector virus. File infectors viruses are made to infect files of on the computer. File infectors spread once the user runs the infected file. The virus copies itself to locations on the computer where it can be executed, usually in RAM. The file infector will continue to infect files while granting the virus access to the infect files. Polymorphic virus. A polymorphic virus is a complicated computer virus that affects data types and functions. It is a self encrypted virus designed to avoid detection by a scanner. Upon infection, the polymorphic virus duplicates itself by creating usable, albeit slightly modified copies of itself. Polymorphism in computing terms means that a single definition can be used with varying amounts of data. In order for scanners to detect this type of virus, brute force programs must be written to combat and detect the polymorphic virus with novel variant configurations. Worm. A computer worm is a standalone malware computer program that duplicates itself so that it can extend to other computers. Often, it uses a computer network to multiply itself, relying on security failures on the target computer to access it. Unlike a computer virus, it does not require to join itself to an accessible program. Worms nearly at all times cause at least some harm to the network, still only by consuming bandwidth, while viruses almost forever crooked or change files on a targeted computer. Many worms that have been formed are intended only to spread and do not effort to alter the system they go by. However, as the Morris worm and My Doom showed, even these payload free worms can cause significant interference by rising network traffic and other unintentional effects. A payload is code in the worm formed to do more than multiply the worm. It might delete files on a host system. Example, the explore zip worm encrypt files in a cryptoviral extortion attack or send documents via email. A very ordinary payload for worms is to install a backdoor in the infected computer to permit the formation of a zombie PC under power of the worm creator. Networks of such machinery are frequently known to be bonnets and are very usually used by spam senders for transferring scrap email or to hide their website's address. Spammers are therefore thought to be a source of financial support for the formation of such worms, and the worm writers have been caught selling lists of IP addresses of infected machines. Others try to blackmail company with threatened DOS attacks. Backdoors can be demoralized by other malware comprising worms. Examples include Doom Juice, which can multiply using the backdoor opened by MyDoom, and at least one example of malware taking benefit of the rootkit and backdoor installed by the Sony BMG DRM software utilized by millions of music CDs previous to late 2005. The history of worms. The real term worm was primarily used in John Brunner's 1975 novel The Shockwave Rider. In that work of fiction, Nicholas Haflinger designed and set off a data collecting worm in an act of vengeance in opposition to the dominant men who run a nationwide electronic information web that induces mass conformity. You have the biggest ever worm movable in the net, and it involuntarily sabotage any effort to check it. How to prevent worms? Worms extend by exploiting vulnerabilities in operating systems. Vendors with security problems provide usual security updates, and if these are installing to a device, then the greater part of worms are not capable to multiply to it. If susceptibility is disclosed, Before the security patch release by the merchant, a 0-day attack is possible. Users require caution of opening surprising email and should not run attached files or programs or visit websites that are linked to such emails. However, as with the I love you worm and with the amplified growth and effectiveness of phishing attacks, it remains likely to fool the end user into running malicious code. Antivirus and anti spyware software are useful, but have to be kept up to date with latest blueprint files at least every few days. The use of a firewall is also recommended. In the April June 2008 issue of IEEE Transactions on Reliable and Protected Computing, computer scientists explain a prospective new way to fight internet worms. The researchers exposed how to enclose the type of worm that scans the internet arbitrarily, looking for susceptible hosts to infect. They establish that the key is for software to observe the number of scans that machines on a network send out. When a machine starts transferring many scans, it is a sign that it has been infected. Allow administrator to take it offline and make sure it for malware. In addition, machine learning techniques can be used to identify new worms by investigate the performance of the leaked computer.
Summary: a virus is a self-duplicating program formed to cause damage to your computer or permit somebody to take control of your computer. All the kinds mentioned above are defined to be a virus, but there are forms of malware and you require to be aware of them. A lot of viruses are written to target Microsoft software. Virus writers know the majority of users using Windows as their operating system and Internet Explorer as their web browser. One easy way to reduce your chances of picking up a virus is to run a Linux operating system. Thank you.